Greetings from the Holland family, serving on our mission field as missionaries right here in Atlanta, Georgia. And yes, you heard that right. Our mission field is the northeast part of Atlanta. And we're more specifically, we serve in a little town called Clarkston, Georgia. Several years ago, I visited Clarkston, Georgia while exploring cross-cultural missions opportunities right here in the U.S. At the time, I was happily serving as a full-time discipleship pastor in Ringgold, Georgia. Loved what I was doing, but God began working something in my heart that day. A good and valid question, I'm going to step back in just a little bit, that you might ask here is, can you really be a missionary in Clarkston, Georgia? Well, first, what is a missionary? A missionary is someone who enters another people's culture, leaves their own and enters another culture with a desire to communicate and plant the gospel in that people group. So the short answer is yes. Let me explain why. You see, Clarkston, Georgia has been called the most diverse square mile in America. As I looked around that day at people who were very different than me and very different than the world that I had grown up in, I began to realize that God was much bigger than the box that I unknowingly had him in. You see, God was not just an American God. God was God over all. He is God over all. He's God over all peoples and had created all the diversity of peoples and cultures for his glory and his purposes. And so as I began learning about and exploring and ministering in a cross-cultural setting, I also came to understand this term, unreached peoples. You see, unreached peoples doesn't just mean lost peoples. There's lots of lost people all around us, everywhere. Unreached peoples has more to do with a people group's access to the gospel, or more specifically, lack of access to the gospel of Jesus Christ. You see, it's not in their language, not in their culture. In other words, I discovered that there were people being born, living, and dying without hearing in a language that they could understand the saving message of Jesus. And that began to bother my heart. When I grasped that reality, that there were unreached peoples, and I was reminded of Jesus' parting assignment for his church, his parting assignment was, go, make disciples of all the nations or all the peoples. You see, when I put those two together, something changed in my heart. People speak of a calling. I knew I had my call to take the gospel to the unreached peoples, to serve as a missionary. My driving passion is to make the gospel accessible to people groups who have not clearly heard. This call led me and my family. I live with my wife Kimberly and our 4 kids, and we packed up and moved. And a little over 5 years ago, we moved to Clarkston to serve as missionaries, and with the desire to make the gospel known to this diverse population living right here from all around the world. Our family mission statement, so that you can kind of understand kind of our heart, is to glorify God. That's why we exist, for the glory and the greatness of God, for his purposes. And we do that by strengthening the church here, locally, and around the world, and reaching the unreached peoples. And so, here's my invitation to you. Would you join us in praying? I genuinely mean that. This work is not just a work for the Holland family. It's not just a calling. It's the mission of the church, and we need others to join us. Would you pray for the gospel to be bold and clear and heard? Would you pray for the gospel to take root and spread along these relationship bridges here and to the ends of the earth? Would you pray for us to be found faithful to the end, and for God to stir many of his people to join the work with financial support? I want to thank you. Thank you in advance for your participation in the gospel. Thank you for participating with us as we together as the church, glorify God by strengthening the church and reaching the unreached. God bless.